Sergeant Bergdahl's hometown, NBC's Janet Shamlian. Mick, first to you, because I know the Pentagon has been briefing on information regarding Bowe Bergdahl and his physical state.
Andrea, we got a briefing just a few minutes ago from Pentagon spokesman Colonel Steve Warren, who said that the word from the military hospital in Landstuhl is that Bowe Bergdahl is in stable condition, but still requires treatment and hospitalization for what he called dietary and nutritional needs, along with continuing psychological evaluation. Now, Warren stopped short of describing Bowe Bergdahl's condition as malnutrition, serious malnutrition of any kind, but he said, look, after 5 years in captivity, he has nutritional needs. Interestingly enough, he's in phase 2 now of a 3-step integration process. And in this process, he's kept pretty much incommunicado from the outside world. He has yet to talk to his parents and won't talk to his parents until both Bowe Bergdahl and his psychologist agree that the time is right. Eventually, when he's released into phase 3, they will reintegrate him into society, homecomings, possible media engagements, and the like. But another interesting thing, besides being questioned by psychologists and medical doctors, he's being questioned by military officials about the conditions under which he was held by the Taliban. Any kind of intel that he can provide to the military about his incarceration, and perhaps about the people that were holding him. Now, they say during any of these phases, 1 through 3, they're not asking him, apparently, about the circumstances surrounding his departure from that operating base in eastern Afghanistan 5 years ago, where many of his fellow soldiers have already claimed that he simply got up and walked off the base without his body armor, without his weapon, and eventually into the hands of the Taliban, Andrea.
And Mick, briefly, is there any clarification as to his father's suggestion that he might have forgotten English in the 5 years?
No indication of that whatsoever. I mean, he's speaking to the doctors, to the military intel officials, so it doesn't sound like there's a communications problem there.
Thanks so much to Jim Miklaszewski and Ayman Mohadin in Germany. You've been talking to people about the conditions that Qatar is going to hold him under. There are a lot of concerns among critics back here in the States that they will be able to either return to the battlefield or to a command and control function because they were so senior. You've got a deputy defense minister involved.
That's absolutely correct. It's certainly a very valid concern, but it's certainly one that Qatari officials, at least telling us, they will not allow to happen while these individuals are under the care of the Qatari government in Doha. Now, we are learning a little bit more about the final hours of that deal, if you will, but more importantly, the conditions in which they have agreed to accept these individuals on Qatari soil really put some restrictions on these individuals. They are banned from traveling outside of Qatar for 1 year. They are not allowed to participate in any kind of political activity belonging to the Taliban on Qatari soil or internationally. More importantly, they will be under very strict surveillance. They will not be allowed to give media interviews or speak to the public. Now, on the offset to that, they have allowed the families of these 5 individuals to fly to Doha and to actually reside with them if they choose to remain in Qatar and not go back to Afghanistan. That is for the families, not the individuals. The individuals will not be allowed under any conditions to leave Qatar for at least 1 year. Now, what happens after that year certainly is a valid question. Will they be allowed to return to Afghanistan? What other roles would these restrictions still be in place? That all needs to be answered in the next 12 months. But for now, they're being described as effectively being placed under house arrest in Doha and not granted complete freedom, as one might think in this situation.
Ayman, thank you so much. Janet Shamlian in Idaho. This is a cause for celebration in many places in the country, but no more so than in Idaho. But the family has been under so much pressure, and there's also just what has happened to the life back home. While he was in captivity, he had a girlfriend who has apparently moved on. What can you tell us about the reception at home?
Well, first of all, there is nothing but joy here today, Andrea, and a sense of relief. People have never forgotten about Bowe. You drive down the main street here and the yellow ribbons didn't come out a few days ago. They've been here and been changed out for the last 5 years. The signs that used to say "Bring Bowe home" now say "Bowe is free." What is a little off-putting here to people this morning that they are expressing to us is they have no issues with the conditions under which he was released. And they say, would you, if this were your child? And it's a little frustrating to them to be asked these questions. They say they don't care how he was released. They are simply glad that a member of their community who they have not forgotten about is coming home. But they admit to it kind of tampering down a little bit of the joy that they've had since they've been asked this over and over again. You know, how do you feel about the fact that there was a deal, how he was released? They're just happy that he's going to be freed. They're very protective of the Bergdahl family. You know, they don't want to give out too much information. I spoke with the police chief here who's known the family 28 years. He spoke to Bowe Bergdahl this morning and really refused to give any indication what was involved in that conversation. They just want to protect this family and protect what should be a moment of joy for them that they feel has been a little bit circumspect. Back to you, Andrea.
Janet Chamlian, thank you so much. And there are critics, as we've been saying, critics of the administration's release of 5 top-level Taliban detainees from Guantanamo in exchange for the release of Sergeant Bergdahl. And they're calling for an investigation, a congressional investigation. House Armed Services Chairman Buck McKeon on the Daily Rundown earlier today with Chuck.
We will be holding hearings. I'm sorry that this is being portrayed as a Republican issue. I think Democrats also voted for this law. It was important for our national security. It's important for our responsibility of oversight of the administration and our national security. This is not a partisan issue. It's just a matter of the law and breaking the law and not informing the Congress according to the law.
Joining me now is Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah, member of the House Homeland Security Committee. Thank you, Congressman, for being with us. First of all, the law and the practicality. I was talking to Tom Donilon down at a national security conference this morning, the former national security advisor, and he said that there was absolutely no notification of Congress before the bin Laden raid, contrary to what had been said on some of the television talk shows yesterday by Republican critics, that in fact operational security trumps anything else, and that they had to move quickly within the last 5 days. What say you?
Well, there is law on the books, evidently, that says that the president shall consult with Congress. And I think that's why you're going to have congressional investigations. And that's why we should dive deeper into this. They may not have come to the same conclusion if they had talked to the Congress.
Well, there is the law that says that for 30 days, they have to have a 30-day notification before any releases from Guantanamo. But there was a signing statement that the president signed or issued associated with that law, basically asserting executive privilege and saying that he disagreed with it. So you can see the running room there. I want to ask you, though, about Susan Rice, the national security advisor, on CNN yesterday, saying that there was an acute health issue. Let's play that.
Given the acute urgency of the health condition of Sergeant Bergdahl and given the president's constitutional responsibilities, it was determined that it was necessary and appropriate not to adhere to the 30-day notification requirement, because it would have potentially meant that the opportunity to get Sergeant Bergdahl would have been lost.
Are you persuaded, or is Congress going to look into what this acute health issue was? Because he was clearly well enough to be loaded on the chopper, to have written a note, SF, meaning Special Forces. He's now in Germany. They say he is in stable condition or serious condition. I will check that fact. Jim Miklashevsky was just reporting it from the Pentagon. If somebody can help me with that. But stable condition, I'm told. What was the acute health crisis that you think dictated that this be done without congressional notification?
Well, to your first point about the president signing into law something he thought was unconstitutional begs its own question. Why would he sign something into law if he thought it was unconstitutional?
Well, it's part of the Defense Authorization Act, so yeah, you know the answer to that yourself.
You can't veto those types of things, and to just flippantly say, oh, well, I'll go ahead and sign this, even though I think it's unconstitutional. It has some concerns. But to point number two, that's one of the things we want to look at. Look, God bless that this U.S. person is home, but there's bad and there's ugly parts of that. I mean, that's the good part, right? But the bad of this is we gave the Taliban their starting team back. We put the 5 guys that have led this organization, have allegedly killed thousands of people and been responsible for that, back into home confinement, which could potentially lead to them being back on the battlefield. That's where we've got a lot of concern. And then the ugly part of it is, yeah, the lack of consultation and interaction with Congress. Even though they don't like it, Mr. President, that's the way our Constitution's set up. That's the consultation that's supposed to happen. Even if you can't get to 30 days, at least try to give some sort of notification. There are ways to do that with the Intelligence Committee and others that could be more secretive. But I just don't like the way the president just decides to do this unilaterally. It's not part of the law, and it's not part of the spirit in which this country operates.
There are suggestions that this is the prelude. It was sort of confidence building, a prelude to working with the Taliban through the Qataris going forward on reconciliation with Afghanistan. They have an office, a political office now in Qatar, and this was a proof that they can deliver, that we can deal with them. It was trust building.
Well, let's be honest. The president, the White House, the United States of America was negotiating with terrorists. And for the White House to suggest it was anything short of that just has absolutely no credibility. If they're going to try to establish credibility in the United States of America, let's be honest, we were negotiating with terrorists, which is a massive change in public policy. If candidate Barack Obama was debating with John McCain or with Mitt Romney, for that matter, and said, well, what I'm going to do is if we have this hostage situation, we're going to negotiate with terrorists. Do we really think that he would actually be the president? No, it's a massive shift in public policy. I don't think it strengthens us. I think it actually weakens us. I think it puts people in harm's danger over the long term. That's the big concern, is the big picture. You got to look at this in the sober light of day and make these decisions, not the emotion of course we want to bring the American home, but in the sober light of day, we need to have these public policy discussions. Negotiating with terrorists is just not something I think we should be doing.
Well, they say, of course, that they were working through the middlemen, the Qataris. But would you leave Bergdahl there, then, if that's the only choice? Would you leave an American sergeant in captivity at the price of dealing through a third party to bring him home?
The price is not just dealing with a third party. We've actually got some decent relationships there with the Qatar government and whatnot. But you took the starting 5, the big 5. These are not Kiwanis Club members gone awry, Andrea. These are some of the worst, most nefarious characters on the face of the planet that have been responsible, allegedly, for killing thousands of people. That's why we had them in Guantanamo Bay. And I worry that we're going to ultimately put them back on the battlefield. They'll be able to direct the traffic and the terrorism against the United States and other Western interests. I feel for the people that are serving overseas that I think will become increasingly targets of these types of terrorists moving forward, because they got a victory out of this. But of course we want to bring our American home, but at what price? And that needs more discussion.
Jason Chaffetz, thank you, Congressman. Thanks for being with us. And a new move to combat pollution and climate change. The EPA Administrator, Gina McCarthy, coming up next. Stay with us. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports, only on MSNBC.